Hi Matrix, are you stressed of your geography paper 1? Don't be stressed. Senkhona. Today I'm not giving out tips, but I'm actually studying the paper with you. I am going to help you study in a way that I used to study in my matric year that led to me getting a 90 on my final statement and 90 throughout the year. I am going to do mid-latitude cyclones. The reason why I'm doing mid-latitude cyclones only is because I am writing exams and I don't want to sacrifice my time for something that you guys don't like. So for me to see that you guys like how I did this video, like, subscribe, and comment that you're requesting for me to continue doing these videos. Let me teach you what you need to know on mid-latitude cyclones. So you need to know the general characteristics, right? So it is a low pressure system. That's the first point. It forms between 30 degrees and 60 degrees north and south. Did you hear me? It's a low pressure system. It forms between 30 and 60 degrees north and south. Okay, don't lose that part. So it forms along a polar front. What is a polar front? A polar front is where cold polar air meets warm tropical air. A polar front where a mid-latitude cyclone, which is a low pressure system, and it forms between 30 degrees and 60 degrees north and south, forms where on the polar front. What is a polar front? It is where cold polar air meets warm tropical air. So it is associated with westerly winds. So another point of characteristics of mid-latitude cyclones is that in the southern hemisphere they rotate anti-clockwise. In the southern hemisphere, South Africa, South Africa, guys, anti in mid-latitudes, tropical cyclone, anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere, and then in the northern hemisphere it is clockwise. It rotates clockwise. The rotation is due to Coriolis force. When are we affected by a mid-latitude cyclone? We are affected in winter. Where? At the Western Cape. We are affected in winter. Where? At the Western Cape. In the Western Cape, near winter, in mid-latitude cyclone iyabashaya amakhaladi. Yabona? Funda kanjalo amakhaladi avamakada in the Western Cape. So another name for mid-latitude cyclone is a frontal depression. Where do mid-latitude cyclones form? So areas of formation, where do they form? They form 30 degrees and 60 degrees north and south. They are found in the mid-latitudes. Mid-latitudes, I guess it's at 30 to 60 degrees north and south, between tropical and polar regions. It makes sense. They said they are found in mid-latitude. Mid-latitude, I need to add these lines. Mid, I guess, okay, yes, the southern hemisphere. Mid-latitude would be in the middle. Okay, so the warm air that would come, they said it's warm tropical air. It comes from the equator. The cold polar air that comes and meet that warm tropical air comes from where? The polar. So they come and meet in the middle. That's where this mid-latitude cyclones form. The name explains itself. The area of formation, mid-latitude, which is 30 and 60, between tropical and polar regions. That's where they form on a polar front. where warm air from the equator or warm tropical air comes and meets the cold polar air, and they form a what? A polar front. It's over the South Atlantic Ocean and Southern Indian Ocean, where warm and cold air masses meet. Where does the warm air come from? The equator. Where does the cold air come from? The polars. Where do they meet? In the middle of where? Mid-latitude, right? So they move eastern towards. Don't make this mistake. I feel like I was just confused now. Just because you hear the word, it moves from west to east, you'll be like, it's western. No. And westerly winds. No. It moves to the east. Okay, to the, I don't know, to the east when I guess to the east. To the east. Ne? It moves from west to east. It is blown by what? Westerly winds. It doesn't move to the west. No, it moves to the east. West to east. Westerly winds. Winds from the west. They blow from the west. They go that side to the east. I think that's a mistake that you guys would make. But yes, they move towards the southern coast of South Africa. Hence, the Western Cape is affected in winter. In winter, that's why. You what? Yes. So, conditions that are necessary to form these mid-latitude cyclones. So, they are 5. I am so I'm going to say MT CAP. So conditions that are necessary to form mid-latitude cyclones. MT CAP. An MT CAP. What does the M stand for? M stands for moisture, right? To form clouds and rain. So you need the moisture from the warm air that will come, right? Yes, you need moisture. And then M is moisture. T is temperature contrast. You need the contrast between the cold air and the warm air, right? Warm tropical moist air meets the cold dry polar air. So that temperature contrast and the moisture, you need that, right? And then we're gonna go to C, which is for our cup. We need Coriolis force. Coriolis force is what causes the rotation. We said that mid-latitude cyclones, they rotate anti, because South Africa, see anti in the southern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, these mid-latitude cyclones rotate anti-clockwise. Yeah, why one? So we have MTC. Now we need the U. What's U? Upper air disturbances. Helps the low pressure system to develop. So the upper air disturbances helps the low pressure system to develop, because the other characteristics of a mid-latitude cyclone is low pressure system, right? Yes. And then P. What is P? P is the presence of a polar front. We need a polar front. A polar front is a zone of instability, because you have this warm air and this cold air, and then they're fighting because they're different people, right? So it causes an instability. So MT CAP, moisture, temperature contrast, the C for Coriolis force, the U for upper air disturbances, and then the P for presence of a polar front. You see, now I know them. We're gonna look at the stages of development. So with the stages of development, we have initial stage, mature stage, occlusion stage, and dissipation stage. So initial stage or formation stage, it is where warm air and cold air meet along the polar front. Warm air starts to rise and the cold air sinks, right? Yes. The mature stage is when there is a distinct warm front and a cold front. So the distinct, now they are there, you can see them, they are distinct, now they are matured. 18 Normally warm front and a cold front. The system is fully developed with clouds and rains. So we have cold front, warm front, they have matured. Bana 18 sebabatala manje bayabonakala sabona banemabele baphelele wabona, and then they have clouds and rains, which is namabele and stuff. Okay, sorry for that example, but okay, yes. And then occlusion stage, it is when cold front catches up with the warm front and then it lifts the warm air completely off the ground. That's why when you see that occlusion symbol, you have the triangle, the semicircle, triangle, the semicircle, meaning that now the cold front, which is symbol, cold front is triangles, right? To remember this, our geography teacher used to say that when girls are feeling cold, their nipples get distinct. They'd be like triangles. So when you're cold, you have triangles, right? Yes. And then the warm front, when it's warm, the flats, they're not distinct anymore. So you have those semicircles, right? And it's a cold triangle, when a warm semicircle, when an occlusion, it's the both, because now the cold front has caught up with the warm front, hence you have triangle, semi, triangle, semi. You see, you have the dissipation stage where the warm air is cut off from the surface, the system weakens and disappears. Okay, we're gonna refresh. So we have the initial stage formation. That is when the cold air meets warm air. Warm air starts to rise and then cold air sinks. Mature stage, 18 babonagala, we have distinct warm front, distinct cold front, and then yes, they are fully developed. They have they have rain and they have clouds. This is a Adam's apple. I'm not laughing. Occlusion stage is when the cold front has caught up with the warm front, hence yes, you get the point. Dissipation stage. Warm air is cut off from the surface and the system weakens and disappears. We're gonna do the cross section through the mid-latitude cyclone. So the key features is a warm front and a cold front, right? Okay, on the warm front, warm air rises over retreating cold air. So warm air rises over retreating cold air, forming what? Stratus, clouds, and steady rain. And then we have a cold front. The cold air pushes under the warm air, right? And then it forms cumulonimbus clouds and thunderstorms. Okay, a warm sector is an area between the two fronts where it is warm, humid, and partly cloudy. An occluded front is when this comes and overtakes. Cold front overtakes the warm front, so it is going to be a mixed weather and heavy rains. And then label, guys, label everything that you draw. Don't assume that they know it. Label it. Label the warm sector, label the cold front, label the warm front, label the air rising, label the clouds, label the rain, label everything, label the points. If they said from section A to B, you label A, this is A, this is B, you know, one time. Know how to draw all the stages: initial stage of formation, mature stage, occlusion, dissipation. Know how to draw all of those. Indicates that the temperature, it's cold near the cold front, it's warm, label everything. Don't try to be as explicit as possible, because you're selling yourself. You want a distinction, right? You want a level 6, right? Do that. Weather conditions associated with each front. So ahead of the cold front, we have cool temperatures, low pressure, overcast skies, cumulonimbus clouds, and thunderstorms, right? And then along the cold front, we have heavy rain, gusty winds, drop in temperature because it's cold, air pressure rises after passage. So when a cold front passes, you will notice a drop in temperature and an increase in air pressure, heavy rains and gusty winds. So on a map, when they say, why would you say a cold front has passed, you will say a heavy rain, drop in temperature, rise in air pressure, or if they give you those symbols to say, okay, there's a drop in temperature, you know, okay, a cold front has passed, right? Yes. And then behind the cold front, we have cold air, high pressure, we have cumulus clouds, and it is partly cloudy, and then we have light rain. Okay, label. And then on the warm front, we have overcast, steady drizzle or rain. We have lower temperatures rising. We have lower temperatures increasing as the front passes. So how would you know warm front has passed? We have an increase in temperature. We have an overcast. We have steady drizzle or rain. It's not heavy rains. We don't have gusty winds, I guess. So, and then on the warm sector, right, which is between the two fronts, it is warm, humid, often clear with light winds. And then an occluded front, which is the both of them, we have heavy rains, cooling temperatures, and cloudy skies. So the impact on human activities and environment. So impact of human activities and environments, because of these two fronts, we have heavy rains, okay, from the cold front. What does the heavy rain cause? It causes flooding and soil erosion. Heavy rain, we have a lot of water, we're gonna flood. Soil erosion, because of the water, it's going to transport the soil. So the fertile soil that we need to farm on is now gone. Soil erosion. And then we have strong winds, in the Western Cape. I've seen a lot of TikToks of people who can't even move because the wind is resisting them from movement. Those strong winds, they cause damage to vegetation. They can also cause damage to infrastructure. Now we go into social and economic. So farming, you wanted me to say this one because really damage to crops. Yebo, true. Yebo. So damage to crops. Rain can help with the crops because it helps with irrigation, but a lot of rain, heavy rain, can cause damage to the crops. Okay, yes. And then there's damage to infrastructure like roads, as I've said, and flights are disrupted by the strong winds and heavy rains. And then fishing, rough seas, dangerous for small boats. We have settlements, so the flooding and property damage in coastal areas, especially in the Western Cape. And then we have precautionary and management strategies. So it's not even a word, but it is WAMF. I'm gonna tell you. WAMF. MWAMF. M is to monitor weather reports. Always check on your phone, okay, where is this cold front? Should I go that side? AKZN. W is for warn communities in advance. Yes, that's what they tried to do with the snow thing. I don't know, I think they did, but I think it was too late. But when you get warned, you would know, no, let me not travel because I'm gonna get stuck in the snow. That's what happened last year, right? And avoid coastal or low-lying areas during storms, because you're gonna learn how to swim. Flood is coming, my babes. Flood is coming. Go M, we're gonna maintain a good drainage system in the cities. Why in the cities? Because the cities don't have soil. The soil is paved up, bafagi pavements. Now we don't have Mother Nature to protect us and drink the water. And F is for farmers should plan around a frontal rainfall. The cows drown, the chickens drown, the dogs. A dog doesn't drown. Identification on synoptic weather maps. So the stages of development identified by the shape and position of the fronts, cold, warm, occluded. So a cold front, as I've said, triangles, nipples are distinct, and then we have warm front, we have semicircles, nipples are not distinct, and then we have the occluded stage, the occluded front, we have the mixture of both. So the impact of high pressure systems. South Atlantic high. So a South Atlantic high steers cyclones eastwards towards the Cape. So South Atlantic high steers the mid-latitude cyclones eastwards towards the Cape. And then South Indian high blocks eastwards movement. So it deflects the cyclones southwards away from the east coast. So South Atlantic high ulwa ne South Africa because ufuna kuletha in le mid-latitude cyclone to South Africa. Une beef natilo. But South Indian has Basetebe. South Indian high it will block the eastward movement of the mid-latitude cyclone from coming to the coast of South Africa, which is Cape Town. So it will deflect it southwards away from the east coast. Weather symbols. Here are the weather symbols. Cloud cover. Maingana luto, it is clear. Aina luto, it's clear. Hey, when it's full, overcast. And then wind direction. If it points like this, it is southeastern. And then the wind speed. If it's half, it's 5 knots. If it's full, it's 10 knots. If it's full and half, it's 15 knots. If it's full and full, it's 20 knots. That's the wind speed. And then we have the precipitation. A dot is a rain. Dot is a rain. But dot ungati no. Ungati uyikoma so. Is a drizzle. Ungati uyikoma is a drizzle. Because uyadripha. Ugqoke isicathulo uwendani drizzle. So dot is rain, comma drizzle, because uyadripha. And then we have a shower. Shower is a triangle. Just imagine that as your invention of a shower head. You want a triangular shower head. Shower is triangle. And then we have snow, which are stars. And then we have hail, which is ishawa futhi ufuna kopa but yena ube subheka etulu and uba black. Hail loyo. Hail na shower, hail na shower. My twins. Etuguti low. Very good. This one very bad. Hail, hell. So ubheke etulu yena akafuna ubheka phansi ubheke etulu qeda pho uba mnyama. Hail. Qeda pho ke it is black. Hail. And then we have fog. Fog has 3 lines. Fog utanzi Adidas. 3 lines. And then mist was like, I don't like Adidas. Meaning shopping my atata. It's 2 lines. That's a mist. Thunderstorm is just an R, but a thunderstorm with a hail is an R with a thunderstorm sign. Remember, hail, guys, my ice. Hail is ice. So satellite image identification. Then in front it is ahead, cold front is at the back. One front is ahead because cold front has to catch up, right? And then clouds rotate anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere. Then we have clear skies behind the cold front. Here's the warm sector in the middle. Yes. I hope you guys learned a lot. You learned how I study, right? You study exactly like that. It's fun. It's easy to remember. It's easy to understand because you're explaining things to yourself. You make examples like the snow. You understand, okay, you have to warn people so that they don't get stuck in the snow. Go and do like past papers on mid-latitude cyclones and then see if you remember certain things. Note down new things that you found out. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys loved the way that I taught you guys and the tips that I gave you. So for me to see that you liked it, like, subscribe, and comment and share with your friends. So yeah, bye.